Hello, and welcome to your daily dose of Truth to Hear. I'm Melanie Keenan, your host, and today we're going to talk, of course, about the two main stories, the impeachment acquittal and COVID 19. But while that is going on continually, there are things going on in the background of our government and in the rules and regulations of things with all these executive orders that actually will affect us going down the line. So we're also going to be focusing mainly today about the prison system. President Biden did an executive order that affects the private prison system. And we want to look at the details and how that really is going to change for equality and equity among all the races. But before we start today, of course, I want to welcome the panel. And today we have Brandy Hunt with us today. Brandy is, well, what is she? She's that person that can do anything. But she is the publisher and author. Her company is On the Right Track, and you can reach out to her on Facebook, On the Right Track with Brandy Hunt. Brandy, welcome. How are you?
I appreciate such kind words. How are you doing today?
Oh, I am doing fabulous today. I am doing fabulous today. I am excited to be here. And I appreciate you coming week after week. You just always bring so much perspective and calmness and logic to our discussion. So I really appreciate having you. Bill Kaufman will be joining us shortly as he is able to. So we look forward to him coming on board as well. But Brandy, let's you and I talk. Well, I think here is Bill coming on right now. Hello, Bill. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good. We were just introducing Brandy and saying that you were going to come on shortly. This is Bill Kaufman for all of you who are new to the show Truth Talk. You can reach out to Bill at facebook.com/BillandBarbara.Kaufman. Bill is a retired, not so retired police officer here in the central coast of Los Angeles. I mean, California, not Los Angeles. Bill, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm just trying to get this set up. I had to leave my area that
Well, that is good. That's fine. Take your time. We're gonna talk
had
first
no
very
connection and
quickly
try
about
this.
the impeachment acquittal.
Am I not in bad connection today?
No, you're good. You're good. So the impeachment is over. President Trump has been acquitted, but is the battle between left and right over? I just want to touch base quickly about a couple of the things that was really coming out during the trial, the constitutionality of it, the law. It was it lawfully executed, and is it an unjust acquittal? What did the Republicans just not vote because he's a Republican? Um, and where do we go from here as a country? Because we are still so divided. I don't know if you guys saw yesterday, of course, it was President's Day, and there was droves of people in Florida lining up with Trump signs and everything, cheering him on as he was driving to and from the golf course that he was on yesterday. So obviously, there's still a lot of divide in this country. Um, I want to start with this. Here's a definition, and then I'm going to pass this on. Here's a definition. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can read it. But here is, according to Cornell Law School, Legal Information Institute, what an impeachment is. And I'm just going to read the red parts. It stipulates, here's a question, that the Chief Justice of the United States is to preside when the President of the United States is tried. The next point I want to bring is that it limits the judgment after impeachment to removal from office and disqualification from future federal office holding. But it does allow criminal trials following conviction upon impeachment. So here's my 2 points. All right. that I want to ask you about. One, there's a big to do that the Chief Justice did not preside over this trial. So was it constitutional to even have that? Bill, do you have any? I know you're the historian of the group. Was it a constitutional trial if the Chief Justice did not preside? And I don't know that you know this question. We
Yeah,
haven't
most
talked
people
about it.
are saying no. Well, I read about it this week and last week, actually more than this week, and most people are saying that law people, not politicians, are saying it certainly never happened before. So whether that's going to be constitutional has to probably try it out in the courts, because it doesn't fit the rules of the Constitution. Nobody's ever, because it says to remove them from office,
Right.
but it also them from running for office again, because I know the Democrats are scared to death that Donald Trump runs again in 4 years, and so they're trying their best to do any that they can do to keep Donald Trump from running. And that's just the way politics works. I've never seen any, this stuff, but that's the way politics works. Historically, it's never happened, though, in office was attempted to be impeached or removed from office. He was impeached because the Congress, all they have to do for the House is have 51% example, but not removed from office because you need 2/3 of the senators. He didn't get that, but they did get all Democrats, some Republicans to join them. So that was probably a
Right.
feather in the cap of the Democrats.
Oh yeah, it definitely was a
But
feather in the
as far as
cap. And I think,
constitutional,
as far as constitutional, no, as far as constitutional, all right.
oh, I
So
was just saying, as far as constitution, the only way that's going to come out is if it actually, it won't now because he was acquitted. So it's convicted. Then it would have had to probably gone to court, all the way up to the Supreme Court, to see if it was a constitutional
right,
situation anyway. So, but now because he was acquitted, and he's not acquitted means if I arrest you for a crime,
right.
and I've arrested you for a crime, if they're acquitted, that's
Right. And the reason, I brought this up after the fact is because I kind of want to bring some knowledge to both sides, whether you're Republican or Democrat, on what actually was the issue with it being unconstitutional or not. And the way I read that is, there is an open door that it could just be to keep him from running for office again because he was out of office. You can't kick him out, but you can do the second half, which is prevent him from running from office. So I think that there is a constitutional basis for them to say we're doing the portion that can be done, that is appropriate, and not the portion that is not effective. So before I looked that up, Brandy, you're shaking your head. I really thought it was just plain out unconstitutional, but now it's like, wait, is that how you think it's being read, Brandy?
Well, not being a whole scholar like Bill, um, I personally just feel like when I was in class, they told me in criminal justice school, they said that sometimes we have to do things to keep the population under control. Because if we lean towards one way or the other, there could be a bigger blow up than we're prepared to handle. So that's why news comes out a little bit at a time. There may be a bigger something on the end, but we only get this much of it because what happened at the when they stormed the Capitol, they couldn't have a repeat of that. And so there's certain things I think they even though it's probably was unconstitutional, they had to make a bigger decision. And over the last year, we've been doing all kind of stuff that we ain't never done before. And so this was just another, to me, it was just another thing that said, you know what, it's time to start changing things. And while we're already just doing whatever we want to do, let's just go ahead and do another thing. And so I wasn't surprised. And I feel like um, Trump has a lot of irons in the fire and a lot of money in the game, and so
Mhm.
they weren't going to make him guilty.
Right. No, there wasn't. But also, the whole process. Now, I'm not a law school, person, and I'm not a historian.
Well,
But to me, when you have a trial, you can't have the judge, jury, and witnesses be the same people. So there's my like, what is this about? How is the Congress, the judge, the jury, and the witnesses? That to me blows the whole trial out of order. There's doctored information, there's spliced videos. Like, how is this not being dealt with legally now, after the fact? And here's my question I'm proposing for both sides. The Democrats are talking about seeking criminal charges against Trump, but that's supposed to only happen if he was found guilty. The but
Yes,
why
but
are
he's already buff thing.
right? So, but they're talking about doing it anyway. Like Brandy said, they just want to have their heyday. But also, why aren't the Republicans going after the Democrats for doing judge, jury, and witnesses and all the rest of the stuff that they're accused of with tampering the documents, splicing the videos? Is this going to go to bed, or are we going to continually see the aftermath of fighting back and forth? That's my last question on the impeachment.
well, I'll go first. I don't. I definitely don't think it's going to bed. I think there's some things that we like to just keep going.
Mm.
And kind of. I think they just want to that tit for tat. It's always been here. I think your original question was, will the left and the right ever stop going back and forth? I don't
With
think.
regarding Trump, just regarding Trump, like he's out of office. Why is President Biden's administration, the Congress, the Senate, why are they keeping Trump in the forefront? Is it just to have still the bully pulpit, out in the forefront so they can go and do what they want behind the scenes? Bill, what do you think? I think Bill's in a stalemate.
Because it's breaking up, but I'm gonna want to have a victory, and they won the election. So, but they want to have a victory, and I think they really were afraid of him running again, and he might. I don't know if he even wants to. I wouldn't want to, but I wouldn't want to run in the first place. So, um, but I think that was their game plan. However, that didn't work out
Mhm.
because he was acquitted. And you got to understand, I've arrested a lot of people, and if it goes to trial and the jury says not guilty, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't get to go up to him and say, "Well, you did it anyway. I'm going to punish you." I don't get to try him twice. I don't get to do any of that. That's called double jeopardy. It's against the law. And none of that. So once you're acquitted, you're acquitted. Now, their argument, I guess, would be it's not a criminal trial, so we can do it again. I guess, I'm assuming, but I don't know. That would have to be fought out in the courts too. This is uncharted waters because no one, probably since Nixon anyway, has had divided people so much. And I mean, Trump has a lot of supporters. 70 million people voted for him, and more people voted for Biden, 70 something million. Okay, that's fine, but that's a lot of people.
It
And
is.
there's a lot of people that aren't, that they watch the double standards of the press and they get mad about it. And then there's people on the other side. I have relatives on the that are very left, and they're just like, they can't understand how everybody doesn't hate the guy. And to the point to where, I mean, I have some friends that have told me they would like to kill him. I've got relatives, not friends. None of my friends have said that, but I've got relatives that said, I wish someone would kill the guy. That's how
Well,
much
they're
they
in
hate him.
good
And
company. After Senate and Congress are the
well,
same
that's what
thing.
I'm saying. It's like,
So,
that's a lot of hate. I don't want anybody to kill Joe Biden. I mean,
but you
no,
know what?
please, no. I pray for
He's
him all the
out of
time.
he's out of office. Can't we just now
Right.
embrace the new presidency and the new administration and just deal with, like, focus on what he's doing? Trump is silent. He's not been making waves since he left office.
No.
I would
And
just, it would be really nice if they could just say, look, Republicans aren't going to go after the Democrats, and the Democrats aren't going to go after Republicans in regard to Trump. It's over. Put it to bed. It's just
I think
ridiculous.
that will probably happen eventually. It's just not going to happen yet. There's too much emotion still.
Now,
Probably not going to happen yet.
well, I'll tell you what, I don't think we're going to solve that on the show either, but I did want to just bring it up and address the things that were concerning. But now we want to talk about, we're going to switch gears to update COVID-19. Okay. Um, no, I did not freeze. I'm thinking. COVID-19. Yes, there you go. So here's what I'm sensing. There's certain cities that are just open and rampant, and certain places like LA who is still virtually closed up. You have vaccine, but you have trouble vaccinating people. Then you have the school system, which is private and public. And we're going to probably do a whole show on this, but I just want to talk for like 10 minutes about these issues that have occurred over the week. So versus vaccine versus not vaccine. All right. Um, how can how can something so important as getting vaccinated, for those who desire to do that, how can that be so hard to get to people? Like, if you have the vaccines, the rollout is atrocious. I have an article here from NPR that talks about DC. Okay. And there is this Community of Hope. It's health services in DC. It's a nonprofit organization. They deal with the low income, mostly Black and Latino residents, right? So, what happened is when the vaccines became available mid January for 65 and older community members, what they saw, because they had to go through the government portal, right? So, what they found was the doors that opened when people came into their clinic, they were all white. Some of them were white prominent people. And they tried to figure out where's our regular customers? Where's the low income Black and Latino population in DC? Well, guess what? They found out that here it shows that when appointments became available citywide at the portal, they were immediately grabbed up by DC prominent and white people. And so they said they couldn't even get it to the elderly and the Black and Latinos in this article, that they had to figure out, how do we circumvent the portal, because there's no way to reach the people who really are in need of it and whose time, it was their turn, the 65 and elderly. So they got permission to now go out of the portal and do it, and they got to 73% of the people were their regular clientele that needed for hope. But this is something that has been going on like all over the country, where the portal is unaccessible to everyday people. So I just want to talk about that for a minute. What's your experience, if you've been getting the vaccine or heard anything about the vaccine? Do you have any wisdom on how to get a vaccine?
Well, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, they live with us, my wife's parents, and they got the vaccine and they just went down and got it. I mean, I don't know. It just that they're over. He's 80 and she's 78, but they just went down and got it. They're the only people I've known that have got it, though. So I don't have a lot of experience with this. But I
Yeah,
do
and you
want to
know
say one
that.
thing about that, Melanie. Very important. I've been saying it for the whole time on this show and even long before this show started. I'm not going to say it's nefarious, but I don't think it's a like somebody back behind the scenes trying to pick and choose. But I don't want the
Mm-mm.
government in charge of everything in life. I don't want them in charge of everything. I don't want to give them that authority, not because they're bad, but because there's no way they can do it. They mess it up. They mess up everything else because there's people involved. And I actually think the private sector does a much better job than the government at doing stuff like this. So that's just my 2 cents. I'm out of it now. I know 2 people that have gotten it, and that's it.
So, Brandy, my question to you is this: if the government is the government staying in it because they want numbers, they want the stats, I'm with Bill. I don't think they're coming out and saying let's try to circumvent and make sure only these certain people get it. But is it just keeping track of the numbers, and because of the lack of supply they need to know who's got it, where it's going, that is they're staying in the middle of this, and instead of letting the private sector just get the vaccines and dose it out to their clients?
Well, what we do know is that there's a dollar amount attached to the hospital, right? So we
Yes.
do know that. So I would say, well, so let me back up and say I was offered the vaccine at no charge because I'm a caretaker in the morning. So I'm considered an essential worker and I work with elderly. The text pretty much said the vaccine is not being rolled out to everybody, only specific people. And you're one of those specific people because you work with the elderly, which also told me the elderly were part of the essential people who would be able to be offered the vaccine and at no charge. That's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I received that
I
as
declined
well.
it though. I
Hmm?
didn't. I declined it. I didn't get it.
You declined
I
it.
was gonna I
Yeah,
was gonna ask that, Brandy. Did you accept it? And you said no. So
yeah, I as well got that text because I am a certified caretaker as well for someone, and I declined it as well, but it did come, hey, you're available.
Right.
But I don't know the process of going in. I didn't go that far. I don't want to take slots from people who want the vaccine. So I'm not
Right.
going to even, put my name in it. The other thing, if you're listening and have you done this, I urge you to stop doing it, because one of the other things that I found out, people are putting their name on every single list in their community, and so and those slots are taken, but some people are saying, the organizations are saying the same name is showing up repeatedly across the county. And so
is
they're
that
not
because they
giving,
want it and they're afraid they're getting turned down? And other,
yes,
they're just seeing
they're
if
just
So it sounds
doing
like
a lotto thing. They're putting their name in every one. But what happens is those slots are taken. And so they don't show up, but they can't fill it because it's not a waiting game. You have to be on the list to get it. So when
mm,
you put your name like a lotto on every single list available, the 5 you don't show up for, those vaccines go to no one. You've taken away the right for 5 people. So if you are doing that, if your name is on multiple lists, please stop. I don't have the right way to do it other than put one list, the one that you want to be on, the one that's closest to you, or the first available. But if you do have your name on multiple lists, it is stopping people from getting the vaccine when you don't show up on the other places. So that's the one thing I want to make sure that is out there. I don't think people know. I think they think, hey, if I don't show up, I'll just go to the next person. But that's not what's happening. Um,
mm.
so the last thing I want to talk about COVID very quickly is private versus public schools. And I want to read this. This is from Buffalo Business First by Paul Lane, and he wrote this short quote about the schools. Daily instruction made local private high schools worth a second look this academic year. Administrators are working on how to maintain that interest if and when normal returns to the public school environment. The reason that caught my eye is because public private schools are open. I know some teachers who work in private schools. They've been open since September, August, September. Um, our own governor, his children go, I think it's Governor Newsom, right? His children
Yes.
go to private school. They've not missed a beat. If you have the money or the connection, your children have been educated through this whole pandemic. But if you're going to private public school because of the actually it's just lack of income, or because you don't want your kids in that kind of socialized setting, your kids haven't been educated very well for the last year. Um, I just want to talk about that because it's atrocious that educating our kids in America has literally come down to who has the money to do all of these restrictions and guidelines from the CDC and who doesn't. Now, I do want to say before I turn it over that President Biden, in his executive order regarding schools, did allocate funds, lot millions of dollars, for schools to be able to meet the requirement of the CDC to open. But then his goal is only 1 day a week, starting April,
Well, I
school
would have
closes
loved that when I
in
was in school, by the way.
Bill, I don't know, Bill. You're too smart. You're too smart.
No, I'm
Oh,
just teasing. I just remember being a kid going, I know if you'd have told me in fifth grade, hey, you're going to only have to go to school 1 day a week, I would be like, really? Wow.
well,
I just think it's funny.
what do you think about that? Should the private schools been able to roll out until the public schools were rolled out? Should it been like all schools until it's equally rolled out? Or is it just money counts? We're seeing that over and over again with this COVID. The big stores like Walmart, Target, they're able to stay open. The mom and pops close. The wealthy people who have private school, their kids can get educated, while normal people in public school cannot. The wealthy gets the COVID vaccine first, COVID testing first. You know, I'm just
Well, as
like, this
far as
is
schools go,
so.
as far as schools go, I don't want to punish people who want to get an education. So I would say, and I know this is super controversial and probably a lot of people would disagree with me, but I am completely for school choice. I want everybody to send their children to the school of their choice. Now, I understand that is completely, there is no Democrat that's ever going to vote for that because you got to send your kid to the public school in your neighborhood and that's it. But I'm against that. I wish there was a way to, the way that has been proposed, school choice, you don't pay anything. Your taxpayer money that goes into the school system will pay the private school. And I know why that people say you can't do that and everything, but I still say kids would have a much better education if parents could say, I can't afford that private school that Gavin Newsom can send his kids to, but if I have school choice, I can send them to the same school Gavin Newsom sends his kids to, and it doesn't cost me any more than the public school. And then at that point, the public school has to respond to the quality of education that the
Mhm.
private school is. So that's my fix for this because I don't have another fix. I see the problem clearly, but that's my fix. And by the way, there's tons of people out there that would say, Bill, you don't know what you're talking about and everything. And they may be right, but that would be my fix. And I've raised quite a few children through the school system. My wife and I have a lot of kids.
Brandy, what's your take on this?
I definitely think it's about money. It's always been about money somewhere. So I definitely think that the dollar bill is what separates us. That's why we have the lower class, the middle class, the upper class, and the beyond upper class, if that's a thing. I personally think that if it was really about saving lives, we could couple with other churches or locations to put children in. So because we don't want to all go to the same school, right? Because
Right.
there's 400 kids in the school. Kids are not the cleanest, and so but send them 1 day instead of 7 is not the fix. The fix would be to maybe put them in a big church that has classrooms in the back of their church. I just feel like they're not really trying to fix the problem. They're trying to put a band-aid on it. And we literally are in a pandemic that says if I touch you or breathe on you, I could kill you. Literally. So to send them to school for just one day still doesn't help, because that could be the day that somebody's sick. You know, that could be the day that they, because and little children like fourth and fifth grade, maybe the eighth and up. But when you see your friend at school, second and third grade, first thing they're going to do is what? Hi, I missed you. Hug, kiss, touch each other. And so you still aren't really fixing the problem. I think they're just, putting a band-aid on it and saying, okay, well, at least we can count them in the building for one time a week. Even I asked my nephew, he does virtual 3 days a week, and he's 8. And I asked him, if he liked it. He was like, no, I want to see my friends. And
Right.
so when you go to school, and I asked him, I said, do y'all have to social distance? And he was like, we're supposed to. That
Right.
literally, so we're supposed to, but we don't. When it comes to the private schools and the public schools, my issue was always one, what you say, I have to live in a certain area in order for my child to go to this better school. Why can't we better all the schools? Why is there a higher um, education level on the east side versus the west side? Why do we keep poverty in poverty? Like, so it's already, it's a system that's already built, and we just keep doing this generation after generation after generation.
Mhm.
So this neighborhood is impoverished. They go to the impoverished school. They have the most crime in the neighborhood. They have the
Hmm.
alcohol on the corner. The drug dealers are out there. So they're not really trying to fix it. They're just trying to put a band-aid on what's already broken.
But
It sounds like we need. Good.
that's the reason I'm for the school choice thing, because as a parent, my kids go to good schools. I'm not going to deny that, but um, I actually, as a law enforcement officer, have freedom of choice. I can say I don't want my kid to go to this school because it's where I'm working and I'm a cop, and so I arrest some of these parents. I have choice in where I get to send my kids. I wish everybody had that choice,
You
but
know,
they won't do it. They won't do it. I think I know why, but I don't really want to go there. But I just wish we would do it, because I think it would really help.
and I think that the choice of schools is a solution because, like you said, if kids are going to take their money from the public domain to private, then the public domain has to step up and meet the criteria. It's kind of like supply and demand. They're not worried about losing the kids, so why do anything about the education level? But if they had to worry about competition with the private schools, then they would do it. And I think that's where charter schools came in, was trying to bridge the gap
Correct.
between public and private. They created charter schools, which actually are wonderful schools from my experience. But what I see here is you're going to have the public schools where I remember when my kids were in public school, I homeschooled the majority, but they did go to some public school. And in the early days, in their kindergarten years, you just went to school. The first of the year, you just went to school. You got their supply list and you went to school. But then when they went back to private public school in the middle school year, they gave us a list that for teacher supplies, because the teacher supplies were no longer given freely. We had to supply the teachers materials, the chalk, the markers, their pens, their notebooks, and their ink. I was like, wait a minute, why am I so the funding went so far down? And I think that's what's going to happen with COVID.
Actually, Melanie, you're actually incorrect there. Funding went up,
Well, I mean, to
supplies
the
went down.
teachers.
The Right, but I mean, per child, it's really weird. I mean, I don't have the answer to this one. Washington D.C., Los Angeles, New York City, 2 to 3 times per child more than Florida or Georgia. And yet the scores in Florida and Georgia outdo the ones in California and Washington, D.C. But they spend tons more money in those cities than they do in Miami. But Miami does much better than New
Yeah.
York, and,
Well,
and
the
education wise.
money's
I
not
don't know
going.
why. I'm not going to say why, but you said funding went down. It didn't
Right.
go down. It actually went up. And
Thank you for
but
that
but the
correction.
quality went down. I'm not going to
Yeah.
pretend that the schools are, yeah, but
It's
the
not
funding over the
going,
years is actually keeps going
but
up
it's
while,
not going to the teachers. It's not going
oh,
to the
I'll agree with
student.
that.
It's staying
Right.
in the administrative issues and higher, but it's not dealing with the kids. So I think what they're going to have to do and what they're going to do is say, listen, if you want to go back to school, parents, for every child, you have a sanitation list you got to provide your teacher. And we're going to be the ones, well, not me, because I don't have children anymore in school. We're going to be the ones, the parents, to supply the masks and the sanitizers and all of this stuff that the schools are going to need to open, and they're going to make us foot the bill, even though there's millions of dollars set aside to do it. It's not going to trickle down to the individual public schools. And I'm with you, Brandy. Why can't we take it out of the government's hands and say, the school down the street from me, you reach out to the parents in that school, see if there's churches, if there's other places that we can kind of small group in our community, and let us in our community decide, hey, it's safe to get 10 kids over here, and we can get one teacher with 5 kids, or and we can kind of come up with personal solutions that fit our community. That would be a solution. We got to move on to the next segment, because this is it.
There
But
was
thank you
one
for
thing
that.
I wanted to
Go
finish
ahead.
that with. You'll get fought by politicians and lobbyists. I'm not going to say who, because I'm not trying to be dividing right now. I'm actually trying to not divide people right
I
now.
know you
But
are.
there's a
You're
very
trying.
large, there's a very, very large union that is involved with this, and they would fight everything that Brandy said, everything Melanie said, and everything I said. They would fight it through the courts all the way to the Supreme Court. They're not going to let happen what we just suggested if they can help it. So
Well, I will tell you
just
this:
that's just the truth. And
if
now
I
once again,
did
that's
have
the way it's going
kids,
to be.
if I had kids in school, and I actually thought about offering this up to people, but I just, I actually am a hermit. I don't know people with children, but is open, just saying, hey, you can come to my house and I will tutor kids 4 hours a day for free, just to keep them the basics, because I know how to do that. I know how to teach kids. Um, if, and maybe that's a solution that I need to do. Maybe I do need to put out there and offer my community, hey, for parents who want their kids to be tutored or trained or educated during this, I can do 5 kids. And I don't know, maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
the answer. Maybe that is the answer, that the moms that or dads that have homeschooled, maybe we reach out to the community and say, hey, we're skilled in this. We can take, if you have to go to work, if you're we can take your kids during the day and school it. I think I just put my foot in it, so I'm going to stop there because I think I'm going to have to do that. I'll let you know how it works out. But let's transition to this executive order. Biden's order terminates federal private prison contracts. Here's what it
Mm-hmm.
means. Okay, so this is from I want to say NBC. Yes, this is from NBC. Um, and so let me just tell you what it does and what it doesn't do. This executive order, it is only for the Department of Justice, private prisons. Okay. I didn't even know there was separate private prisons. You have the federal private facilities. Now that houses 73% of ICE immigration. That houses another 50,000 people in federal private prisons. We're not talking about that. We're only talking about the Department of Justice prisons. Those numbers are much lower. So if you're not familiar with a private sector prison, um, let me tell you what it is. It means that that prison is owned by a corporation, and honestly, there's only let me get the name of it. There's only two, and the main one is Core Civic, um, that runs all of the private prisons in America. All right. So we're only talking about, I want to get the number. Hold on a minute. We're talking about 8.1% of all incarcerated people. That's it. 8.1%. That's all that's going to be affected by this executive order. And it's going to phase out. So the executive order says you cannot reissue any new contracts with a private for-profit prison. It sounds great because private prisons, think about it. If I have a company, it's a company. It's not something that is just there because it needs to be there. It is a company. It is for every prisoner, they get paid X amount of dollars. For the length of the prison stay per prisoner, they get paid X amount of dollars. So their goal from a company standpoint, a profit-based standpoint, is how many prisoners can I get in here and how can I keep them longer? Okay? So if I go to prison in a private prison and I've got a 5-year sentence, and I'm not saying this is what's happening, but I will read you some articles just to show where I'm getting this from. They are sometimes provoked so that the sentence gets longer because they don't want to lose the income on my life. So I am in jail, minding my own business, but I am provoked by administration. I am provoked by other inmates. Hey, you provoked that person. We'll give you something on the back end. And therefore, now I'm back in court on an aggravated assault charge while I'm in prison, and I got 10 more years. That's what's happening in private prisons. Not only that, if I don't no one's overseeing me, it's my company. If I don't want to do extra programs that's going to cost me money, I don't have to. So they're not getting programs. They're not getting, rehabilitation programs. They're just getting locked up in cells. If I don't have to, the reasons people go to prison is for rehab, supposed to be. But these private prisons, time and time again, I'll let you talk and then I'll read some of this. They're a disaster. They're doing absolutely the minimum of healthcare, the minimum of cleanliness, the minimum of programs so that they can keep their profits. So I applaud that they're looking at it, but what he's done, we're going to look at it. I don't think it's going to matter. So I'm going to pass this to you, and then we'll bring up some of these facts and articles.
Tell you that I myself have never. I don't know anybody in a private prison system because I'm from California, so we don't have anything like that. I don't know which state's closest, but the people I arrest go to a public institution. That's all. So that being said, I've never run into anybody at all that has been in a private institution. In fact, when I first learned about it, I was surprised. When I read that it was 8%, I was actually surprised it was even that high. And so, but that means 8 out of every 100 people are housed in a private prison. And most of those, though, I read were from states, not from the federal. So I don't know how this order is going to affect that because it's only to the federals. The states can still use the private systems or the public ones, but it showed up. What I read was it showed up because of so much overcrowding in prison systems. That's how it started, and it looks like it's kind of coming to an end. Now there was more to it than that, and that was the part that you haven't brought up yet. And I'll just leave it at that. It's the history of it is unusual, and yes. I'm actually probably not for it, but I don't know enough about it. But the additional order on how people are going to have to be housed in any institution, that's going to be an interesting thing. I don't know how that's going to happen.
All right, Brandy, let's get your introduction comment on it, and then we're going to go into some of these deeper issues.
Did you have a specific question, or you just wanted me to get my thoughts on it all?
Well, I just want to get your thoughts on it first. What are your thoughts about private? Is it okay to profit off of anyone going into a place of destruction on their life. Now, listen, let me just preface this. I believe, look, you do the crime, you do the time. I totally believe in responsibility for your actions. But as I've looked into the prison system, and we might even have to do another show just on this again, it's outrageous how they're treated, and this executive order isn't really going to do much about it. All right, there. Let me throw it back to you.
So I was gonna say that, so I'll start there. I think again, let me roll back and say my big picture is everything is built on some kind of system. I am totally against inhumane treatment. I Just because you committed a crime doesn't mean you have to be treated poorly. It's a criminal justice system, so it's supposed to be justice for the criminal, right? We created that for them, but then to put them somewhere and torture them over and over, you might as well have given them the death penalty. So, in my opinion, if you're going to, I'll give it to you like this. I used to work for Verizon, cell phone company. People can go recreate Verizon. You just can't call it that. You can have a company like Verizon, but it was the same principles, it was the same practices. You had to have a different name because it was not Verizon because I was private it was privately owned. I worked for both companies. I've worked for Verizon, the big company, and I've worked for the subsidiary, but I had to perform because I was still we still represented Verizon. And I feel like that's not what happens in the prison system. With these side prisons, it's like if you get stuck over there, you get treated inhumanely. If I could commit a crime in the public, I don't know what it's called, the public prison, and my time, maybe I do get more time, but it might be a year or two. But if I do something extra in the private facility, it's like I can get an extra 5 or 10 years. That's not fair. It should be the same across the board, which we know our justice system is not the same across the board. So I think that's just another broken system that we have in our world right now.
Yeah, you should not, we should not, anyone should not be making money off the backs of anybody else when they have nothing to profit or gain from it. Big companies can make money off of you, like Verizon made money off of you. You worked for them, they made money because you were working the store, but they paid you. It was something you did willingly. But to have someone in a private prison, listen, here's from Statista, says this, that, and this was January 29th of 21. It's an estimated $374 million profit. $1 million profit, where only 12% of that is spent on inmates. So $374 million profit, but 12% or less is spent per inmate.
But isn't that something like legalized slavery?
It is, I think it's worse
I'm
than
going to say
legalized
that
slavery.
math. I'm going to have to say that math doesn't work.
This
I don't
is
know how
from the
many people.
Department. Well, let me tell you, this is from the analysis of the Department of Justice. Let me read the whole thing, okay? Private prisons make a profit, an estimated 374 million annually, giving them an incentive to
Each
cut costs.
individual prison or all of them combined?
Private prisons combined.
Okay, so all of them
But
combined.
there's only 12. Let me just say that there's only 12.
Okay, 12. Okay, go ahead. I'm going to do some math in my brain.
Do some math in your head. 12, 374 million. Okay? And out of that, however you divide it, 12%. Tell me how much that is. If anybody can
That's
figure that
30
out.
million per. That's 30 million per place. That's to pay for everything. I have no idea what it costs to run a prison, but it would seem like it would cost a lot more than $30 million to run a
Well, let
prison.
me tell you the facts. This is coming from NBC News, and from the article I showed you the headlines on. The numbers, it says, is 195,000 people
Okay,
estimated, and then another 14,000 in different private managed facilities. So
so 200,000.
210,000
Yeah.
there are people. Okay, so this is what they're saying is you're making that much money to do a prison. And like Brandy said, prisons rehabilitation. You're supposed to have treatment for medical facilities. You're supposed to have counseling. You're supposed to have rehabilitation services. Private prisons are typically not offering that level of care to the inmates. Here we have, and I want to be fair because I want to be fair to the private prison facilities. But let me just say this: the Justice Department found that private prisons see high rates of assault, force incidences, and lockdowns. So this is what Biden said. This is from President Biden. He said during a press briefing that this policy is the first step to stop corporations from profiting off of incarceration that is less humane and less safe. He is doing this to begin an overall plan to address systemic problems in the criminal justice system. So President Biden is saying, listen, I'm doing it because it's bad and we need to put a stop to it. And this is the beginning of his criminal justice system revamping. Um, so does that help?
Well, yeah, I mean, what I'm saying, I'm not for private prisons, to be honest with you. That's something that in my mind, and I don't know enough about it, but in my mind, when I first heard about it, I thought it sounded pretty strange. We don't do it where I work as a cop, so I thought that was strange. But I'm just doing the math. If I'm not wrong, and I don't have a calculator here, that's not very much per person. I mean, that's my point is that it has to cost more than that. You can't, even if you turned around and gave all that profit to 200,000 people, they would have virtually nothing. Remember when we had during the Obama years, there was quite a few $100 million stimulus at that time, the omnibus thing, and they gave it to a lot of people. People were getting $175. They thought, hey, I'm going to get $1 billion. No, you're going to get $175 because that's what it, when you divide it by everybody, 375 million is a lot to me, but it's not a lot to an institution.
Well,
I
but
mean,
wait a minute. That's profit, though. That's not
yeah,
how
but if you
much they
turned
have to
around,
run your
if you turned around and put it back into the system, that's not that's very little money per inmate.
Mhm.
I mean, that's all I'm saying is like there's not much profit in it per inmate. And I'm not
But
for this. I'm not for it. I'm
yeah,
just doing the math. That's all I'm talking
yeah.
about.
Okay, so per inmate it might not be profit, but the money that they're getting isn't going to doing the right thing. But I will say this because we got to be fair. Core Civic, which is one of the major corporations that does private prisons, the spokesperson Pablo Paez said this: the executive order merely represents a political statement, which could carry serious negative unintended consequences, including the loss of hundreds of jobs, negative economic impact for the communities, and also where they're already struggling due to COVID pandemic. So he is saying this: it's not going to help. We're going to have issues. Where are you going to put these prisoners? What about the jobs to all of these facilities? All of these people are going to be out of work. Where are they going to go? So he's saying there's going to be negative impacts, and of course, this doesn't by far address the issue of our prison system just by putting a band-aid on the Justice Department private prisons. There's so many other prisons. There's so many other issues with our prison system. So is this just for show, or is it really supposed to impact our community?
Well, at the best, it's 8% of the population of people in prison. So yes, it's probably as much for show as anything else. But our criminal justice system is absolutely broken. I don't deny that, and that's coming from a cop, because I can tell you that we just had a person literally the other day try to kidnap a young girl. Whenever it didn't work, but when the cops showed up, went on a very long high-speed pursuit. He wrecked, he fought the cops, he did all these things, and they put him on house monitoring.
Oh
And you know
wow.
what? He cut off his bracelet a couple weeks later. So now this girl is in absolute fear he's going to come back and get her. I couldn't even believe that that they put him on house monitoring. I actually was shocked that they put him on house monitoring.
In the
But
same
they did.
community where this girl lived, right? You're talking about.
What's that? Yeah, he went
They
to her
put him
house. He followed her.
in.
And he tried to kidnap her. And he only failed because she was smart. If she wouldn't have been smart, he would have succeeded. She did everything correct to keep herself from being kidnapped, but he kept trying and trying. And then when the cops got there, he took off running in his car, driving, and he went on a very long pursuit. He eventually wrecked, and then he fought as good as he could. He lost. He went to jail. A couple weeks later, I get the note he's cut off his ankle monitor. I'm like, who put him on ankle monitoring? Why is this person free? Yeah, that's the system that we are dealing with. So everybody hears about the stories of, it was terrible in jail, it was terrible in prison, it was a horrible time. And I don't deny that. It's not a nice place to be. But
Well,
I can't believe some of the other stuff that's going on, because I'm working on it from putting people in custody that I see a couple of weeks later on the street after they've been convicted. And I'm like, well, we didn't have room for them, so we just let them go.
and you
But
know
they
what?
got convicted of a crime.
We're going to have to take this a little bit further in our discussion, but I do want to say this. One of the main issues with this that is not impacted is the ICE immigration. Immigration prisons are still open. Um, they are federally private facilities. So the Department of Justice facilities are private, but then there are federal private facilities which house some inmates, but mostly the immigration detainees are held in these federal private prisons. And he's not doing anything for those. Those private prisons are still staying open. So here we have you can have private prisons closed for this 8.1%, but the private prisons open against immigration are still going to be able to recontract. So there's a lot of, of
But I'm
course,
not sure what you're going to do with what are you going to do with the people that are have been arrested federally for immigration violations and stuff. If you don't put them in a public prison, do we have public facilities for them? I mean, you're going to have to build them. You're going to have to do that. I mean, I don't know.
I don't think
there's
there's
always a question for every freaking thing. It's crazy.
Well, and we have to end our segment today, but the problem, this is the thing. What it's highlighting is when kind of like when you tell your kids, "Hey, clean your room," because you see a little bit of dirt, and then they don't do anything. And 3 days later, you say, "I think you need to start getting your room cleaned up," and they don't do anything. And then they don't do anything. And if you're a parent that don't worry about it, you go in 2 months later, you can't see the floor. There's bugs. It's going to be atrocious. And now you say, well, clean up. Well, now it's a whole big issue. You can't clean it that way. You have to revamp, gut the room, and start over. This is what's happened with the prison system, and that's why people like that offender is just let out, because they've not taken care of it. They haven't done the recommendations from the Justice Department in previous administrations, and now it's just like, oh wait, we can't ignore it anymore. But what are you going to do with these people? They are people, and immigration detainees. I'm going to tell you what, they should not be in a prison system with criminals. Not at all.
Right, but that's why. But Melanie, I think that's why they probably have these private facilities. That was the answer. They agreed with you and said, okay, well, we're not going to send them to San Quentin. So what are we going to do? And that's probably how that all came about. I don't know that. Yeah. I'm just saying it probably.
Sometimes we talk it through and we can understand where they're coming from. And that was one of those cases. If we talk long enough, we can be like, oh, wait, it makes sense to keep those private prisons open for federal immigration services because we don't want them. I don't think they should be detained anyway. Anyway, that's my thing. Brandy, last word for today. You have a last word for today? We have to wrap up.
Yeah, no, I don't have any last words other than wash your hands, stay safe, don't breathe on anybody, stay up to current events because I believe things are changing. Some things are changing for the better. A lot of things are changing for the better, and sometimes it has to get worse before it gets better. But I do believe that by summer we'll see some of this stuff turn around.
All right. And Bill, what about you? Last words for today.
Well, I'm a very upbeat person, so Brandy and I are on the same page. Keep your head up, move forward. It's going to get better. That's it. I believe it. And I'm going to have a good life, and I want everybody else to too. Bow your knee to Jesus Christ and move forward.
There you
Amen.
go. And my last word for today is simply this. No matter what you're seeing in the news or dealing with personally, remember the person next to you, your neighbor, your coworker, the people at the grocery store, they're not your enemy. They might have different opinions than you. They might think differently. They might react differently to what's going on in society, but they are not your enemy. Treat everybody with kindness, with love. Above all, put on love towards one another, and that will help the small section of what we live in be such a better place. If you need prayer, if you have questions, would like to be a guest on any of our shows, you can reach out to us at truthtohear.org or email info@truthtohear.org or social media at truthtohear. Whew, that's a mouthful. So reach out to us. We're going to have future shows. I'm looking exciting to do the cream plan, to look at that, and also the cancel culture. Say that twice. Cancel culture. We got to look at that because freedom of speech is being so attacked, and people are. I never understood canceling, but all of a sudden they just disappear. You can't find them anywhere. And we want to look at that. But thank you so much. We hope that we have given you some knowledge today, something to think about, some truth to be able to process in your life. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget, every day we have a daily dose of truth to hear. And let me take this off. So tomorrow we have a table talk conversation with David William Buckland. He's the author of Holy Made Man. You don't want to miss that. How God took one man from total despair to victory in his life. And Thursday, we're doing the last church of the 7 churches in Revelation. That is the Church of Laodicea. And then Friday, join me with a message about heal thy land. It looks like healthy land. Well, I tell you, if God heals your land, it will be healthy. Thank you again for joining us.